Welcome to the Tactical Business Podcast. I'm your host, Wade Skalsky, and today I'm speaking with Toby Leary from Cape Gunworks. Toby, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, Wade.
Yeah, I'm excited. I don't know. We either haven't had someone on the show or it's been a long time since I've had someone from Massachusetts. That's where you're at, yeah?
Yeah. Behind
Nice.
enemy lines here in Massachusetts.
Well, I've gone farther north to Maine and Vermont, but each is so interesting, the different states, and I live in Virginia, so we're a pretty gun-friendly state, at least for the moment. But
Yeah.
we'll see how that goes. But I'd love to kind of just dive right into it, and let's chat a little bit about how did you get to where you are now and running Cape Gunworks?
Yeah, sure. So I was a lifelong enthusiast and hobbyist, if you will, around the Second Amendment. I kind of fell in love with shooting at 12 years old with the Boy Scouts. I grew up in what I would call an anti-gun home. My parents wouldn't even let me have a BB gun, so I was kind of left looking in through the cracks of the fence at all my friends who got to have the cool stuff, and became friendly with a bunch of people that were like-minded. And so when we all turned 18, and I had a couple friends that were older that were, when they turned 18, we all applied for licenses and got guns and started hunting and shooting and whatever. And then I realized that something was really wrong when I applied for my license to carry at 18, was all the steps I needed to go through and all the hoops I needed to jump through and the fees I needed to pay and all the stuff I needed to do in order to exercise my right to keep and bear arms. And I said, geez, this doesn't feel like a right. It's a whole lot more like a privilege. And so that kind of spurred a little bit of, I would say activism in me. And I became a little bit more nuanced when it came to the Second Amendment rights. I wouldn't say I was a very active advocate, but I was still very, supportive of organizations that were fighting the good fight and whatnot. Fast forward, I had a long career in construction. I'm a builder by trade, and I had my own business since 2003. And what I ultimately did was I did a business trip with a friend who was one of the first ones I used to go shooting with. He was one that was older than me, and we did a 2-day handgun class out in Nevada. And then we really said, we need something like this out east. We need it in our area. And when I was 18, 19 years old, I was framing houses with a guy who was a kitchen table FFL dealer, but he really didn't have any interest in expanding or making this business grow. I would be riding around from job site to job site, and I'd say, look at that building over there. We could buy that place, and we could have a retail store, and we could probably have enough room to put a range in the back. And he's like, you're nuts. This is Massachusetts, dude. You can't do that, in Massachusetts. And I was like, why? That doesn't make sense to me. I don't like that answer. That's not an answer. So that was working its way around in my head since I was 18 years old, and come to, I guess it was 40, when I was 40, if you will, or 38 or 39, I did that trip, and we kind of on the flight back, we started to whiteboard what it would look like to write a business plan, to have we definitely wanted an indoor range. We wanted a nice retail establishment that was clean and modern and well lit and, welcome to all walks of life. And then the third part was to really put an emphasis on training and make sure that people learn the safe operation of their guns and become responsible gun owners. So we wrote a business plan. We started to look at property. We started to try to raise money, which turned out to be impossible. And then we were trying to do this all in one fell swoop. And the banks were like laughing at us, like, okay, you want to build a multi-million-dollar facility with a range and retail and all this, and you're a builder and you're a software guy. Yeah, come back and, tell us when you get some customers. So we broke the project off into 2 phases. Number one was just open a gun store, establish a customer base, and customer relations, have sales behind us, and then go to the bank and try to buy a piece of property that we could renovate and outfit with the range and the full implementation. And that's how it went down. That's what we were able to do.
Well, I think it was smart to kind of, especially since you had the gun experience, the firearms experience, but you may not have had obviously the gun retail experience.
Mhm.
And there's always a learning curve with regards to that. Did you, when you started phase one, let's talk about that. Uh, did the business lessons that you had as a builder, did those translate to doing a retail brick and mortar store?
The basics did. I mean, obviously, making payroll and accounting and staffing and hiring competent people, but it was a very different business. Neither one of us were in retail at all. So other than my customer service interaction was like one customer, one big project that could last 6, 8, 9 months. And then at the end of the day, I'm on to the next job. Again, one customer that could last 6, 8, 9 months. So retail is you're interacting hopefully with hundreds of people a day. And so it has its differences. In other words, in some cases, it's a lot easier to make the customer happy when you're talking a few $100 transaction and good customer service versus a 9-month project that has change orders. And, by the end of long jobs like that, people don't want to see me in their house anymore. I mean, money to them. That's the way it is, just on long, drawn out construction projects. But however, I found it very easy to make a retail customer happy because you just offer good customer service, you treat them with respect. So that part of the business did really fold well into the retail. And it wasn't exactly rocket science to say, how do you know it's a good retail facility? Well, do you want to go there? And how do they treat you when you do go there? That was really we knew there was kind of a problem in the industry. And I'm not saying this to, rain on any other businesses out there. I'm just saying in our area, especially, it was not business wasn't done the same way like a restaurant or a good retail establishment was done. It was done kind of, they knew there was a high barrier to entry and they treated you that way. So a lot of times customer service was very lacking and it was kind of a take it or leave it attitude. So a lot of times you need a box of ammo, you go in, you hold your nose, you suffer through the transaction just to get what you need and go and get out. That was something I didn't want to perpetuate. I wanted to be disruptive to that. And I wanted to say that the gun industry, even though we have a high barrier to entry, does not have the luxury of running its business any different than any other retail establishment or restaurant or something that you're trying to woo the public into your facility to have more than just a transactional experience, more like a relationship. The whole concept to me was I want people far and wide within my state to say, I'm thinking about buying a new gun and, I got to plan my day accordingly so that I have enough time to go to Cape Gun Works because why would you ever buy a gun anywhere else? And I don't say that because I don't want people to shop at other places, but that's the level of customer service that I wanted to, achieve to or aspire to. And we're 10 years down the road. We're still aspiring to that. I wouldn't say we're there yet. We certainly try, but the point is, I want to be the best of the best in the industry, not to the detriment of others. I have this saying where, local waters support local fishermen, right? I think that no matter how many fishermen live in a community, they can go out and they can all harvest a catch and they can come back and they can feed their families and feed their communities. And I still believe that. Same thing goes for any industry, right? So I don't think that if my business plan is to try to put that guy out of business, that's a terrible concept, in my opinion. I believe there's enough business for all of us to go around. So let's raise the level and raise the standard for everybody to be much better at what we do based on treating people how we would want to be treated. It's the most basic. It's like the golden rule of life. Why shouldn't it apply to business?
Yeah, that's the one constant that in dealing with different businesses that I've experienced in interviewing them is customer service is always the first pillar of their business. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter if it's in a brick and mortar store, it doesn't matter if it's a range, it doesn't matter if it's online. Like customer service is a through line for that entire for every business that I talk to. The second thing that I'm always interested in is geography, right? So
Mhm.
you're in Massachusetts. How did you select your first? You have one location.
One location.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did you select your first location? How does living in Massachusetts impact that? And then, what are the downstream effects that you've experienced because of that choice that you made?
Yeah. So this is actually a pretty interesting story because we live on Cape Cod, which is the arm floating in the ocean, right? It's the part of Massachusetts sticking out into the ocean. So technically, we're a peninsula, which is ultimately a dead end street, right? You can't loop around. It's not like we're on a busy thoroughfare where, 200,000 or 2 million cars go by a day. That doesn't happen. We're on a kind of an isolated community in Hyannis. And so when we were deciding to put down roots somewhere, we said it would make much more sense as a business decision to go about an hour, hour and a half away from where we are. But it would take a severe toll on family and our, both of us, both my business partner and I had young families and, raising kids and wives and plus we're involved in our local communities a lot. So 3 hours of travel time a day didn't exactly, make me excited. Plus I still have my other business, so I need to pay attention to that as well. And it was like, it would make a lot more sense to move my business to where there's a 2.5 million people in a 15-20 mile radius as opposed to where we live, where there's a 200,000 amount of people in the 15-20 mile radius around us. So it's, a percentage of, 10% of what it could be as far as the demographic studies that we did. So we recognized we weren't making the smartest business decision on location because of the dead end nature of us. So we said we need to become a destination. If we're not a destination, we're going to be able to have a decent business, but it's not going to be what we are truly envisioning for our business to be. And so that's what we've been doing over the past 8 to 10 years is really trying to emerge as a leader in the industry, trying to be on the cutting edge of what's available in technology and service in our class offerings and our training and whatnot. So and it's working. A lot of people will come and support us from all over the state, really. So that has proven to be a heavy lift, but it freed us up to do other stuff that was more important at the time than just making the business the main ingredient or the most important thing in our life.
Well, by that decision, you added 3 hours a day of commute time into productive time for the business. So that
Mhm.
is a positive trade-off from that perspective. What are three things that you feel like you guys did that made the business a destination, right? If you could like boil it down to two or three things that really made an impact to have people want to drive to the store.
Yeah, I believe it was a customer service, like we already talked about. Um, B, have a wide range of product that may or may not be available in other stores that people want. Like really put an ear to the ground and listen to what people want and what it is that's trending and try to offer the most competitive price we could. A lot of times, especially in our early days, we were at a severe disadvantage to other gun shops that were bigger, more well established, had better pricing with manufacturers or distributors, or in some cases were members of buy groups. And so we were at a disadvantage. So we would still maybe cut into our margin a little bit more in order to stay competitive with the prices that they offered, but try to win them over by customer service. And then thirdly, I would say it was our community engagement. we we would really try to stay out in front of things. We get involved in a lot of local charities. We we're always on the radio, or we're always doing um, try to do some PR type things that, like right after Sandy Hook, um, not Sandy Hook, excuse me. Um, I forget which one it was. It might have been Parkland. Right after Parkland, we offered a free class for any teacher or school administrator or any employee of any school anywhere in the state. And we had a massive class that, came in. It was like 75, 80 people. It was covered by the local newspaper, front page coverage. So we get a lot of kind of earned media attention through our community efforts. And so that has really, I think, endeared some people to us that are willing to say, you know what, these guys are really putting their neck out there, so I want to support them. So that's helped.
Yeah, I think that outreach is a soft metric, right? You can't put it on a spreadsheet. You can't, you can't, sometimes you don't see the direct impact on your business, but I think that is a very wise, wise approach and strategy, because there's so many different ways you can do it, especially if you have a decent sized community. So, all right, so you're going through the process, you've got your store in, you're doing this outreach, you're doing customer service. I see that you do have a range now. What was that transition like? How did that happen? And then what made you feel comfortable? You're like, okay, yeah, we can add the range now.
Well, it was a lot of stepping out in faith, if you will. It was, you know, what happened was after a year and a half, like from day one, people who came into our shop, our little 2,000 square foot shop, we had a set of plans hanging on the back wall with the vision. So we sold the vision, really, is what it came down to. We said, guys, I don't want to operate a little mom and pop gun store for the rest of my life. I want to do this. I want to be a retail training facility, a retail center and a regional training facility. And, I kind of sold people, and everybody said, that's great. We really need it. That's amazing. There's no public ranges around our area. So I said, I want to have a public range. And people are like, man, we really need that. That's great. Good for you. And it's like, so after establishing that customer base and kind of selling that vision, and then people would come to us and ask, how's it going with the range? Good. We're still trying to, raise some money. We tried a crowdsource funding thing that fell flat on its face. Not a single person donated. It was really funny. I put my heart and soul out there in front of a camera, and everybody was like raving about it. Like, this is amazing. This is awesome. But nobody opened up their pocketbook and sent us a buck or two. It was really funny. I mean, it was painful at the time. Now I look back on it, it was funny. But what happened was, once we were able to locate a building, we stepped out kind of in faith and said, we're going to buy this building, and then we're going to pre-sell memberships. And we did that. We were able to raise a good amount of capital by pre-selling memberships. We were very transparent to people that we don't have the money to do this. We are going to raise money through pre-sale of memberships, and then we're going to have what we need to go to the bank, and the bank will fund it at that point once we get this ratio of amount down. And you never satisfy the bank, right? They make you jump through a million hoops. But so we got some people that were like, like, you're asking me for $300 for a pre-sale membership. And we said, yep, and we'll cap that rate for you. It won't go up other than some marginal, depending on, like cost of living increases. But we were able to raise, like $250,000 through that raise of pre-sold memberships, which was really a liability to us because we got to deliver on it, right? If we never deliver, now what do we do? But we were very honest with people. People would come to us and say, and what if you never open? And we had a good line saying, then you're out $300. But we've lost everything because Brendan and I had literally pledged our entire life savings. Our houses were up. We're all tied to this transaction. We joked like our kids are pledged under this, so we'll lose our children if this thing goes south. But the truth of the matter is, once people realized how much skin in the game we had, and that we were putting everything we had ever worked for to that point in our life on the line, people were like, "Yeah, I'll give you $300," and so because there were three types of people: the people that were like, "It's never going to happen," and they stood back with their arms crossed and kind of wanted to watch the failure. Then there was the people that were like, "I really want this to happen. So if I see it getting close, I might be willing to help." And then there were the third type of people that were like, "We're believers. You got the right vision, you got the right plan, you got the right, uh, you know, amount of enthusiasm behind it. We see this happening. So here's $300 and sign me up." So that was, pretty amazing to watch. So it wasn't easy, but it got done.
Yeah, the key is those early adopters, right? Like, how do we attract these people so that they come in first, and then you have the people who are like the medium people come in, and then your late people jump on the bandwagon. And I think I've never heard of that done before, by the way. That's the
Mm.
first time I've heard of that done. It's a genius idea. Obviously it's ballsy because you can't build it.
Right.
But you get to sell the dreams of your customers, right? Now,
Mhm.
and well, I'm sure the bank loves it too. And they're like, okay, yeah, we see we have this interest, and these people put their money where their mouth is. Were you discouraged at all, or did you ever consider quitting when your crowdsourcing didn't raise $1? Because it's interesting, because you would think that if you have that level of interest for people that would pre-buy because it's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
You're basically crowdsourcing it, but you're just calling it membership, and you're just renaming it, right? It's basically the
Yeah.
same thing. Like, walk me through that. Did that occur to you to quit or to rename it, or how did that, in your mind, how did you deal with that?
No, I dealt with it that it was the right thing to do, the wrong way to do it.
Hmm.
Because I didn't have the platform, I didn't have the way to get that in front of the masses, so to speak. I was hoping that a couple of, like you said, the early adopters would get into it, see the vision, and then they would spread the word, and it would start a wildfire, so to
Right.
speak. But that didn't happen. And two things. One is we were going to the world with that
Mm.
pitch. What's some guy in San Francisco care if I have a range out in Massachusetts? He doesn't, right? So to get him to chip in $5, $10, he'd have to be a really die-hard, like Second Amendment guy who has a friend or a buddy or a family member that lives down the road from me in order to, maybe donate. But on the other hand, the people in my community is really the marketplace that I had to go to, and they were the ones that had to become the plank owner and the early adopter to really start to say, "Hey, yeah, I can see this thing coming into focus. Let's help it along." But to answer the original question, did I get discouraged? Of course, I was discouraged, but never thought of quitting because that's just not in my nature. And also, I've never, I was joking with my wife the other day. I've never let money get in the way of anything that we put our mind to do. Like, money is just the tool, right? You figure out how you get it so that you can make whatever it is you're doing, whether it's building a house or whether it's, putting your kids in private. I put my kids through private school. Financially, I didn't have the money to do that, but we did it. We just figured it out. We just worked harder. We just, you know, cinched the belt a little bit, and we tried to make it happen. But on paper, it doesn't really math out real well. So, and I tell my wife all the time, I said, money isn't, it's an obstacle, but it's something that you can overcome if you get creative, if you think it through, if you put it out there. And so we just had to pivot instead of scrap the idea. I knew we had a good idea. So it was just, instead of throwing the whole thing away and going back to the drawing board, it was just pivot and figure out that door's firmly shut. Let's find another one that's open, and lean on that one.
So now the location for the range, where is it in relation to the brick and mortar? And then the building itself was already built. Did you use the building and say, hey, here's a building. We already have the building to kind of sell those memberships. And then I'm assuming the build out of the, well, I guess you're in construction. So did you build it out yourself or walk me through that process?
Yeah, no, in hindsight, I should have, because I would have saved a tremendous amount of money. And I am a commercial builder, so I really should have. But I was running a construction company at the time and was like, I don't have time to be, making decisions on in the field on every little thing that's happening on site. So I did hire a builder as a construction manager to do it. And, in hindsight, it was a real big waste of money. I should have done it, especially since I had labor resources at my disposal, like project managers who work for me. I could have just parked them in that position and expensed it and still paid my company to do it, but it would have been, and I would have saved hundreds of thousands of dollars. But so that's one of the things you kind of live and learn, and, an obstacle that you overcome. And I would have had an advantage that most operators wouldn't have. But again, I just thought it was in our best interest to get someone who does this for a living in that space every day to come in and run it. But there was that. And by the way, the building that we bought is 40,000 square feet. It's 20,000 over 20,000. And the basement area has like a 3 loading docks, so we can take shipping and receiving and through there. But the range is under the same roof as the retail and the training classroom. So it's all under one roof. We built 15 lanes that are 25 yards in 2 different bays. So we have a bay of 8 lanes and a bay of 7 lanes, and it's all under one roof. So they're not on 2 different locations. So we wanted everything under the same roof. So that's how that all played out.
So now you've got the memberships, you built it out. What was the first year or two like for the range? I mean, because it's, from my perspective, it's cool because you have the continuity, right? You've got a subscription model. You're getting a set number of people. How did you grow the range? What were some of the growing pains? If you could have done something differently, what would you have done differently for the first year or two of the range?
Yeah, it was, honestly, it was tough and touch and go for a while there. We were stretched pretty thin. Couple of the things that happened at the last minute, like right before we bought the building, our bank pulled the rug out from under us and said, we don't want to be a part of it anymore. And we were like, what? We had this bank all lined up and we were told they're Pro 2A, and the vice president of the bank is so excited about this. He's going to fly out and watch the whole and, see the whole operation and blah, blah, blah. And at the end of the day, they got cold feet. And we were scrambling to find a bank. We interviewed like 3 other ones. So we finally got one that understood the concept, that had funded like 4 or 5 other ranges. And we got a loan with them, but it was not a very good loan for us long term. And it was very difficult to get out from under. But we really had, we had ticking time bomb of, our deposit money would expire and would lose it and all this stuff on the bank, on the building purchase. So there was really a timing issue too. So we finally were like, we got to just bite the bullet and get this loan because we haven't got another bank to come to the table. And we couldn't find a local bank that would want to do business with us. At the time, it was right during like Operation Choke Point. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, where there was like under the Obama administration, there was a federal kind of unwritten mandate that they reclassified firearms manufacturers and retailers like the pornography industry and marijuana dispensaries. So they were unbankable, basically. So all the big banks like BOA and TD Bank and whatnot wouldn't touch us with a 10-foot pole. And then we had to find other banks that would like think about coming in, and most of the time they just forget, said not interested. So we got a bank in Wisconsin to do it. We're in the door, but we're under a pretty heavy monthly burden, and it was just the terms of the loan. So we were trying to refinance. No one would look at us. The numbers weren't great. We're kind of breaking even, if you will. And then we hit the what's known as the Trump slump, 2016, right? I don't know if you're familiar with the term or not, but it was a rough time for the firearms industry. And so we really had to get creative. We had to try a whole new business model, which was more of like just volume selling, like get our pricing to the point where any retailer would laugh at the margins we were selling stuff at, and they would say, "You're nuts." So we were trying to make it up with volume. And then, it was, I'll be honest, it was really rough those first 2 or 3 or 4 years because our volume increased because of price. But the demand wasn't really there per se because of no one was really worried the rights were going anywhere. And so that whole 4 years under the Trump term from 16 to 20 was actually like some of the best for the economy, but it was terrible for the firearms industry. And so um, we ended up increasing our volume, which got us into a buy group. And then the buy group has helped a lot with, increasing our margins because we're purchasing better. We also learned a lot about inventory controls. Instead of having so much inventory on hand, we buy more on demand, which is a two-edged sword when things get hard to find. But even still, it meant we were a little, more profitable. So we were gaining profit here, there, and everywhere we could, and really just rolling up our sleeves and white knuckling it and pulling it out. And sometimes the low hanging fruit was to let a couple people go, and I hate that, but that's the way it is. Sometimes you have to do it. And so all that being said, when 2020 came around into 2021 and 2022, when kind of the good old days for the gun industry and the worst times for everybody else, that really helped us a lot. And we were able to become a very profitable business at that point. We're like, man, if we could do this every day, it would be a profitable business. And since then, we've really been well established and been able to turn a profit year over year, even with our overhead. And then we were able to refinance our building, which was huge because that reduced our monthly mortgage payment by like $10,000 a month, which was huge. So it was little things. We just keep course correcting on the little things. Taking care of the customer is still number one, but internally, we have to keep kind of refining the processes and the SOPs and the what we do, and figuring out how we can continue to grow in the market share, and also increasing profitability wherever we can, whether it be buying better or and then sometimes it's just volume based, sales. We still take a little bit of that into the marketplace.
Yeah, I think one thing that's really interesting is you talked about, okay, we're going to have to change tax here, and you took action. Now, the volume selling kind of strategy wasn't super profitable, but it opened a different opportunity in terms of the buying group that maybe you didn't think of before, right? So, and I think that's always an important thing in business, is to remember, sometimes just taking action, even if it's not the right action, is better than doing nothing, right?
Yeah.
You can't just roll over and die in that scenario. And I'm very cognizant too of the banking challenges, because one of our sponsor is Tactical Pay, which they offer merchant services to two-way businesses because they keep getting debanked all the time.
Mm.
So you're going through these challenges, you're solidifying, the range, you refinance. So now everything's kind of working. I don't think you told me, how far is the range from your actual brick and mortar store?
No, it's under the same roof. So
it's the same roof. Okay, maybe
yeah.
you did and I missed that.
Yeah.
Okay. And that, when you got the original brick and mortar store, was that your plan? You're like, okay, let's go here with the hopes of maybe one day buying the whole building. Was that kind of in the beginning? Did you think that, or
No, that was the plan in the beginning, was to
Mhm.
buy the whole building and do it right from the start. And
Got
like,
it.
if we back way up to before I even opened the mom and pop little storefront, it was to do this exact business model of a range, retail, and training all under one roof.
Mhm.
And we call it the three legs of the stool. But it took us a while to A, find an appropriate building, and B, sell it to the bank. And we needed that customer base. So that's why we broke it off into phase 1 and 2.
Right.
But yeah, it's all right. I mean, you could probably hear the gunshots if they were shooting some high caliber in there right now based on my mic. But yeah, it's right across the hall. So, uh, yeah, it's all under one roof.
Well, that's awesome because you don't want that friction, right? Like any friction, in my opinion, is that any friction in business that you don't have to have, you should get rid of because sometimes the difference between winning and losing is like this much, right?
Right.
So, well, let's talk about the training aspect a little bit. So you've got the location down for the range, you've got the brick and mortar. How do you fold in the training aspect? Do you cater to a specific type of customer? Do you have tiers like, okay, this is more tactical side, this is a more safety side? Like walk me through that, your philosophy on the training side.
Yeah. So it's all, I mean, I would say our number one customer is kind of the first time gun owner. We're still training a lot of people. Is when I say training, I use it in air quotes because there's two types of training. One is the government required class in order to exercise your right to keep and bear arms. So you have to get a permission slip from government in order to exercise your right to keep and bear arms in Massachusetts. You can't buy a gun, possess a gun, own a gun without the license. So the first step is getting your license. So we teach a class, our license to carry class. And it's like a basic firearm safety class that takes place months before you're going to ever own a gun. So you buy the class, take the class. It's a 4-hour class, and we have live fire and non-live fire. Some people move here from another state. They've already had guns. They just need to get the license. So they'll take the non-live fire. Then other people are like, I've never shot a gun. I want to. Even in that scenario, we say, listen, we really want you to understand this is the how to get my license class. I don't want you to leave here today after firing 10 rounds out of a 22 on target that you're good to go on your new gun purchase, when it finally comes 3, 4, or 5 months down the road. Because that had been the mentality, just like we were disruptive to the business model of the gun store in our area. We wanted to be disruptive to the mindset of, hey, yeah, I took a class when I got my license, so I'm all set. And what really made us think about this was I carried a gun for 15 years before I took my first defensive firearms class. And when I took that class, the whole day I was like, I'm an idiot. I'm just an idiot. I can't believe how stupid I am that I carry a gun in the real world for 15 years and never having done this. Now, I was safe. I could take the gun out of the holster, drive it out on target, fire a few shots, put the safety back on, look it back to the holster, snap my thumb brake back on. I was safe. I could hit the target, but that was like the easy part of carrying a gun in the real world, right? I didn't know anything about all the situational awareness about, the body's internal and external natural reactions to stress. And, I didn't know what a dynamic critical incident was. I didn't know what, unsighted, kinesthetically aligned, unsighted fire was. Like all the things that are going to happen to your body physiologically under this extreme amount of stress. And yes, I could probably figure it out under stress, like a lot of people do, right? You can read the Armed Citizen and NRA magazine and see that people get the job done a lot. And but the truth of the matter is there's a more efficient way. And that really resonated with me coming from the construction end of the world, which is, I was there when we were hammering nail walls together and plywood onto studs. And then we went to nail guns and it was like, oh, wow, this is efficient. This is nice. I can really up production. We're not using hand saws anymore. We're using skill saws with plug-in cords, right? More efficient. And so the same is true for defensive firearms training. I can learn a more efficient way to be effective at defending myself or the life of somebody I love. And so really it was trying to adapt and bring that to the firearms community, that as a whole, we should feel the pressure to recommend or take someone to a class or go to a class ourselves within the industry, because if we don't, it's going to become government mandated someday, like it is in Massachusetts. And that's something I don't think is constitutional, and I don't think it should ever be the case. I would like to say that the industry is doing a better job than the government mandate. Because what happens with the government mandate, you end up watering it down to the lowest common denominator, and kind of everybody gets the sticker, right? Why not just let everybody get the sticker and say you can buy a gun constitutionally, but do you know how to shoot it safely and effectively? Like most of the customers in my place, after a quick conversation, they're signing up for a class or a private lesson or a group class or a small group class or an event where there's an instructor-led situation, because they, and especially the new gun owners. That's why I say we cater a lot to the new gun owners who have been, just recently in the last few years introduced to this. They don't have any problem admitting that they weren't born with a gun in their hand. They're like, we're in for our first gun. We just got our license. So how do we shoot it? Oh, I'm glad you asked. Here's a class. We have pistol handling 1, 2, 3, and 4. That by the time you're done with that, kind of series of classes, you'll be drawing from the holster, taking evasive action. You'll be learning about situational awareness, and you'll be learning what is most likely to happen in a gunfight, statistically, all that kind of stuff. And so we really emphasize that. And if some people are like, yeah, but I don't want to be embarrassed in class. Okay, then take a private lesson. We got some great instructors. They'll take you out on the range privately and teach you the same stuff. So it works out well.
Yeah, it's shocking to me, and this happens sometimes too, even with police officers, in terms of how little some departments are awesome. They train their guys up. Some they don't train at all, and they just have to shoot it once a year. And I know I take firearms lessons, and I always tell my guy after every time I take a lesson from him, I'm like, you make my family safer. Thank you. Because I'm always better after doing a lesson, I think. And I think the second thing I think that's really smart too is catering to the beginning gun owner. You create a customer for life, right?
Yeah.
Because if they've never had a gun, and then they come in and then you help them get their license, you help them train up, they're going to come to you, and that builds in that stickiness of the customer. Are you seeing that in the numbers in terms of like the lifetime value of your customer? Is that something that you're seeing?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, every once in a while, like all hobbies, you're really into it at first, and you front load your training, and you're coming in, you're spending a lot of money, you're buying ammo, you're taking classes, you're getting holsters, getting a few guns, the whole 9 yards. And then life gets in the way, and some people drift away, but you see them a couple times a year. But I don't think we've lost them as a customer as much as they've, kind of got busy doing other things. So I would like to say that, we can hold them at that level of enthusiasm forever, but I know better. But I will say that a lot of the new shooters that came in 2020, 2021, came in for out of maybe fear, even like, oh, I see what's going on in the world. They're letting people out of jail, uh, you know, defunding the police, and they're burning down cities up the road. And, I need something to protect myself. So they came in under that auspice of needing to protect themselves. But the truth is they fell in love with the hobby too, and it became a way of life. And now it's almost a social outing, to come in with, I call it a lot of the roving bands of women that visit our shop, and I love to see it. They come in like 2, 3, 4 with all their range bags, and some of them have range bags on wheels. They're wheeling them in and getting targets. They get their glasses and muffs, and they make it a social event. They're just out having a ball. They're getting some good reps down range, but they're also having fun. It's like going to the spa, getting the nails done, or going, out to eat, right? It's kind of the same social aspect. And that I think we're very fortunate of and I do believe that is the fruit of digging fertile soil of good customer service. Because if they never had the good experience in the first place of buying that gun and wanting to come back and shoot it and wanting to introduce other people to it, then, we wouldn't have that kind of explosive growth, if you will, of customers wanting to return and wanting to repeat. So that, I believe, is the real winner in all of it, is taking good care of the customer will ultimately expand the Second Amendment for everybody and preserve it for future generations.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, the more people you bring under the fold, the more advocates you have for the Second Amendment for sure.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, you're creating the conditions for those, you have the kind of like the top of funnel, beginner entry level people, but then you create the conditions for those downstream effects and those more like highly interconnected social gatherings at the end. So it sounds like you've got the training set up, you've got the range set up, everything's working together with the brick and mortar now, and you have sort of like this, this complete business as you envisioned it when you planned it, right? What does the next 3 to 5 years look like for you guys? Are you just making it better what you're doing now? Are you looking at expansion? Are you looking at maybe more doing a web presence? What are the next steps for you guys?
Yeah, the next step is certainly web presence. We could certainly through some investment and a new website or expansion of our existing one, probably capture some more market share via the web, which would be a lot more productive than a second location. Although our original business plan shows us having 3 locations, we do want to expand into 2 or 3 other locations. But we found that doing the web in between location number 2 and 3 is an important way to feed the kind of backfeed the location number 2, because ultimately we'll just be doing what we did 10 years ago. We'll have a lot more education and a lot more knowledge on how to do it, but nothing has got cheaper. And the markets we would go into, the real estate's going to be more expensive. We all know the employment is more expensive. And then the logistics of it all are going to be more taxing, so we can do it. There's no question about it. And we still want to do it. In the next 3 to 5 years, I would definitely like to open location number 2. But I really want to use a lot more web sales as our stepping stone to get there.
Yeah, I think that's wise. You don't have to go for the home run ball this time, right? Because that's
Right.
what you don't want to jeopardize everything that you've built, but you do have the solid foundation to be able to start to kind of make those steps. Well, look, I know we're kind of coming up on time. I really enjoyed talking to you today. 2 things. One, I'd love to have you on the show again in 6 months to kind of find out where you guys are going and see how the web presence is working. Where do people find you? Talk about your socials. If they want to contact you directly, how do they do that?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks again, Wade. It's been a lot of fun, and I'd be happy to come back on anytime you want. Just let me know. And you can check out all of our socials. We're at Cape Gunworks. And we also have another set of socials called at Rapid Fire Radio. We do a weekly podcast and we do a radio show on Sundays. So you can find all the stuff there. It's also on the at Cape Gunworks socials as well. And yeah, we're all over most of the social media sites out there, and trying to stay relevant in an ever-changing world.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I appreciate everyone tuning in, and we're right in Hyannis, Massachusetts. So if you ever come to beautiful Cape Cod, be sure to look us up and come on down and send some lead downrange.
And you guys are capegunworks.com, correct?
Yes.
And
Yep.
if they want to reach out to you directly, is there an email they can send, or is there a form on the website that they could submit?
Yeah, Toby at capegunworks.com. Yep.
Amazing.
Yep.
Well, Toby, again, it's been great to have you on, and I always learn from these, and it's really encouraging to see the advances that you guys have made. And I'm glad that everything's working great for you guys.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And just let me know when you want me to come back.
100%. Great to talk to you today.